Israel is facing major diplomatic backlash over the airstrike that killed 7 international aid workers.
Well, of course, this happened while they were delivering desperately needed food to the Gaza Strip. Now, Israel's Defense Forces Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi has issued an apology for last night's deadly Israeli strike on an aid convoy in Gaza. He says the strike was a result of misidentification.
Last night, 7 employees of the World Central Kitchen were killed. The IDF completed a preliminary debrief. I want to be very clear. The strike was not carried out with the intention of harming WCK aid workers. It was a mistake that followed a misidentification at night during a war in a very complex conditions. It shouldn't have happened.
The Israeli Chief of Staff further added that an independent body will carry out a thorough investigation that will be completed in the coming days. The findings of the investigation will be shared with the World Central Kitchen and other relevant international organizations. On the other hand, Israel's closest ally, the United States, has slammed the country over these strikes.
According to the White House, U.S. President Biden is outraged and heartbroken by the Israeli airstrike. He has called on Israel to do more to protect aid workers.
We were outraged to learn of an IDF strike that killed a number of civilian humanitarian workers yesterday from the World Central Kitchen, which has been relentless in working to get food to those who are hungry in Gaza and, quite frankly, around the world. We send our deepest condolences to their families and loved ones.
The American president also pointed out the difficulties which are being faced by aid workers in Gaza. He says the conflict has been one of the worst in terms of how many aid workers have been killed. In a statement, Biden said the major reason why distributing humanitarian aid in Gaza has been so difficult is because Israel has not done enough to protect aid workers trying to deliver desperately needed help to civilians. Now, for more on this, we're being joined by Jacob Oldor, Director of Reset at the Center for Defense and Strategy from Washington, D.C. So thank you so much for joining us. Of course, as we mentioned earlier, the IDF has apologized for the unintentional, that's what they're calling it, the unintentional killing of the aid workers, saying this was due to a misidentification of targets. Of course, the question is an apology enough?
Well, thank you so much for having me on the program. Good morning. The audio you just played of the IDF spokesperson reporting out the initial findings of an investigation indicate indeed that this was a misidentification. It is a tragedy, of course, and not to minimize it at all. But you know, I think what we're seeing, it's important to emphasize, is transparency and due diligence in conducting an investigation. I mean, these types of tragedies happen in conflict areas, and the White House spokesperson John Kirby said earlier in the day as well that the United States has found no instances, in fact, of Israel violating international law in its conduct of its operation against Hamas throughout this conflict, and that indeed the strike was not intentional, as the preliminary findings reveal. So I think it's important to put it into that context of the extreme care and precautions that Israel is taking, but that indeed, as General Hagari said, in the complex conditions at night, misidentification happens, and these types of tragedies, unfortunately, do take place.
Point is also that if we talk about Israel's allies as well, at this point they are seemingly extremely irked by how Israel has been carrying out its operations. So, of course, the question is Benjamin Netanyahu really pushing the boundaries here and testing its allies' patience at a time when the humanitarian toll is through the roof? Of course, the situation in Gaza is devastating, to say the least. There have been numerous calls for Israel to really rein in its operations.
The fact is, I mean, as Mr. Kirby emphasized yesterday, there is no change in the support the United States is giving to Israel. They are coordinating very closely, including with the imminent operation in Rafah, and they are working overall very closely together. So there is no change in the measure of support from the United States or other allies to Israel. And indeed, as Mr. Kirby said, The threat remains very acute from Hamas, and Israel is right to make sure that October 7th does not repeat itself and to do what it takes vis-a-vis Hamas to prevent that from happening.
All right, that was Jacob Ollirod joining us from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you.